I know, more than as far zoomed out.
When we're far zoomed out, it's like they're up there by themselves, which they've done. She was in the nominating meeting. I don't know if they're done yet. Yeah. I'm not sure they're moving now. Have they gotten to crime yet? They were mad. What are you guys doing?
I must be a Presbyterian.
You must be.
Yes, I did. I now know who I am.
You know who you are. We only send them to ministers who we're pretty sure know who they are. There were a few who came off the list, but
full up right now?
No,
Oh, okay.
we can have like 9, so we're good. But you need to let me know if you're
If I'm really,
actually really interested.
I know.
Sort of, kind of, maybe.
I know. I just started thinking about it, so.
Okay.
Okay. It's Wednesdays, right?
Typically, Wednesdays, it's been at 1, but we move the time around, and we can move, we're
mean,
very
I-
flexible, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean that, I'm more flexible than most people on that kind of thing, so.
Mostly business.
Would you be open to that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, let me think about it a little bit. I'll let you know.
We still have the quilts. Yes, they were put on for sound.
I'm just going to start that recording and the 2 cameras recording.
We need a mic. We need a microphone for introductions from Sue.
I think when we get to them, yes.
We can.
Go ahead on your microphone.
Hello. Hello. I welcome you all. My name is... Is the mic on?
It is. You're just going to have to speak up louder
Oh.
in the back.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. I'll be closer. My name is Sue Krisnick, and Janet Edwards, the moderator of the ARTT, Anti-Racism Transformation Team, couldn't be with us today, but asked if I would just welcome you all and just give you the mission of ARTT. So the mission, through prayer, study, scripture, and guidance of Holy Spirit, will be an effective resource and catalyst to dismantle institutional racism in our Pittsburgh Presbytery. So we're honored today to sponsor this conversation. This is not the first. If you go to our Justice Ministries, there are many dialogues between these two gentlemen, these two pastors, on, let me see, it's awareness and transformation. So today we are awareness and transformation, engaging difficult conversations and leading the church into challenging topics. So we're glad you're here, and I'm going to turn it right over to you guys.
Thank you, Sue. We should probably pray. You pray.
We should. I'll pray.
Yeah, you pray.
Lord, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for the opportunity to gather and to be together as your people. Lead, guide, and direct us in these conversations. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I'm going to move this mic up.
Yeah.
Quick.
And Jay's adjusting us in real time, too. So,
Yeah. So first we want to thank you guys for, no, we should do it how we normally do it. My name is Reverend Ralph Lowe,
and my name is Reverend Brian Wallace.
and welcome to this episode of Awareness and Transformation. We are excited to be here with you. A personal note here is I really enjoy having these conversations with Brian. You know, we live in a pretty divisive world these days, I would say. And it's nice to have a partner in ministry who gets you, who understands some of the things I personally go through as a person of color in a predominantly white denomination. So I really appreciate the time and effort that we put in to having these conversations that Sue alluded to. I guess we really wanted to start by centering on why we decided to do this. We recognize that more and more we hear this divisiveness, this us and them language all around, right? And I got to be honest, Brian and I were pretty sick of it. We get phone calls from pastors, we get upset elders talking about them, how they do it, why can't they be a little more like us? And we continue to ask the question of why. Why can't we create spaces where there's an opportunity for individuals to come together with differences of opinion and decide to stay there and have a good conversation? And not leaving with saying, we just agree to disagree, but truly seeking the truth through Jesus Christ, of course, and an opportunity to maybe come away a little better. So we decided to mimic that today and have a good conversation about specifically race, racism, and Christian nationalism. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my brother for our first kind of outscope to bring us back in.
So I think the one thing to know is people ask us, like, do you guys script these? No. So we have blocked out the time. You have blocked out the time. I would love to tell you where we're going to end up, and I cannot. Mm-hmm. We talked through yesterday what we're going to do. What we do know we're going to do is we're going to talk for a little bit. At some point, dinner is going to come. We will then give you the same questions to wrestle with that we are going to discuss here. And then after dinner, we're going to share a little. If we get to the hour where you're like, I have got to go, or I am tired of these two guys talking, no problem. You just head on out. We will not be upset. We have had people walk out many times before. It would not be the first. That has happened multiple times.
Yes.
So that's kind of just the disclaimer before we even get started. So one of the things that we always need to talk about is why have conversations about race. Mm-hmm. I served a I served a totally white congregation for 10 years. And whenever the topic of race came up, it was viewed as being divisive and unnecessary by some. And so that begs the question of why bother talking about it, especially in predominantly white spaces. And I'm going to go back to the spring of 2019. We were hiring this new director of justice ministries.
Very handsome young man.
Very handsome, not young, but very handsome. And there's an age gap here, just to be clear. And we're talking about it at staff meeting, and what we realized is everybody else was on vacation the week that Ralph was supposed to start. And I was like, oh, it looks like I'm taking Ralph out to lunch on his first day. And I had met Ralph once in my life, at a farewell party for a pastor. We had been briefly introduced, but you were emceeing and doing your thing. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so Ralph and I went out to lunch. It was a great lunch. But what I figured out was that I had never worked with someone like Ralph, who had the life experience, the background that Ralph had had. And for me to be a good colleague, I needed to understand more how Ralph saw the world. And that really gets to our first questions of motivation, right? One of the things that I say is bad motivation usually produces bad results, right? And so the question that we will kind of want to start with is, what is the value of talking about race? And I will be very selfish in saying my main motivation in engaging conversations about race starting in 2019, especially 2020, was to make sure that I was not a jerk as a coworker, right? It was very pragmatic for me, of like, I'd worked with persons of color before, but not in that same level of proximity, and I did not want to be a jerk.
Yeah. And I felt
that remains my main motivation, is
Yeah.
to not be a jerk when I meet people who are different than myself.
Yeah. And I felt that, and, when Brian talks about motivations, what I run up against a lot in my justice ministries work is people say they have the motivation of living a life led by Jesus Christ, and being open to racial reconciliation and open to a liberation, which I'll use later on and describe and give a definition for later on. But really, they're checking a box. They want to. It's performative. It is not convicted of loving your neighbor. It's more out of an obligation than anything else. You know, what I think the main important thing that Brian and I wanted to start with here is, you know, when we talk about motivation, you know, is your motivation performative when you enter into these spaces for these conversations? Because as Brian said, it can enter into poor results. Or is it really gospel-centered, where is a motivation of sustaining a long-term, in this case, working relationship, but for all of us who are here, an opportunity for long-term liberation for people of color and minorities. With that, Brian brought up a good point, which is proximity. Before I get into that, we forgot to establish, you know, what do we want you guys to get out of this at the end? What do we want you to have as you walk out of this door between 6 and 7 o'clock this evening, and for those of you online as well? What we really want you to be able to do is have a few tools to take with you to have these conversations in your communities of faith. I recognize that, and I affirm that is a difficult thing. It is much easier for me, who is the Director of Justice Ministries, and for Brian, who is my coworker, to sit up here and talk about race, to sit up here and talk about Christian nationalism. I get that. But I have to tell you, as our motivation is, what we're seeing in our presbytery, with our pastors, with our churches, is just this cultivation of division. And the only combatant against that is providing spaces for people to have these conversations where they are divided. You know, we hear this term of purple church, whatever that means, right? Well, if we're going to live into that purpleness, we need to offer spaces for people to have these conversations. So what we hope today is you will leave with a couple resources to enter into your communities of faith and be resourced enough to have these conversations faithfully, not having all the answers, but creating a space for people to be comfortable enough to bring themselves fully and honestly to those spaces and just have it out. Because I'm telling you right now, we are not getting it out there. What we're getting out there is, if you don't think, it's tribalism. If you don't think like me, then I don't want to hear from you. If you don't think like I do, I don't want to hear from you. And again, we just have to create spaces where we can come together, where we may have difference of opinion and offer a space for us to come together. So let me take a step back from there. So proximity is what Brian was talking about. So, you know, one of the things Brian mentioned was, you know, he took me to lunch, we've cultivated that relationship, but it gave him the opportunity to see the world through my eyes. So you and all of you, if you watch the videos we've presented, we talked about the driver's license scenario for myself and for him. Now, my kids, I have 4 of them. When they got their driver's license, I had a different lens than Brian did. When my minority kids got their driver's license, for me, I had heart palpitations. I thought about all the ramifications of these young men and women driving in a car in this world today of color, okay? But for Brian, as he would attest, he was very excited. He no longer had to drive them around.
I had different heart palpitations.
You had different heart palpitations,
Different heart
absolutely.
Right.
You had
The
different,
drivers of those were different.
the drivers of those were completely different, right? And I will have to tell you, Brian recognized that was when he came to me to tell me how excited he was about his children getting their driver's license. He recognized and said out loud, I know that's not your experience when your kids got their driver's license. So let's kind of have a conversation about that and talk about it, right? Which was very, very important. Now, the big question is, you know, proximity helped that, and we have these conversations all the time. For all of our brothers and sisters out there, you may say, well, I don't have people of color around me sometimes. I don't have people who I can go to, who I trust, and I can talk to about these things, right? Brian, I'm going to ask you, what do you do in those instances?
So I think one of the things that I've really learned and come to appreciate is developing kind of these intercultural communication skills. It's not something that you can plan on needing, right? It's not like, hey, next week you're going to encounter a person who's a first-generation Korean immigrant. You better learn how to talk across cultures, right?
Yep.
And so often, so we did this a couple weeks ago at one of our congregations, predominantly white congregation, and that was the question that came up over and over and over again. And basically the subtext was, how do I find black people to talk to?
Yeah.
And we had to kind of back up and be like, that motivation is not good,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so So my funniest story, and I was really grateful for it, was I was at Cedar Point one day and ended up sharing a roller coaster car with a gentleman of color. And I stepped into the car because his kids were in front, my kids were behind. As I stepped into the car, he gave me a very clear look that he was evaluating whether or not he could trust me. Okay? Number one thing was to be like, yeah, I don't blame you. If a middle-aged white man was sitting next to me on a roller coaster, and I was in his spot, right? And so, but immediately, I hearkened back, what would my good buddy Ralph say? Brian, fight against your instincts and talk, right? And I sat down and I was like, hey man, what's up? That was all I needed to do. That's all I needed to do, right? I didn't have a trigger warning that a week ahead of time. When you're going to end up on a roller coaster next to somebody of color. You better have your, no, it was developing those skills ahead of time. That was critical in that moment. I was like, oh, just act like a normal human being, right? But there are cultural differences, and we're going to talk about that. But I think that's one of the key things is like, these are skills we need to develop now, even if they're not one that we have to use because we don't know when we're going to need them.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. And, you know, Brian came back, of course, and told me that story, and I was very proud of him for doing that because, you know, as a person who's been in that space, who has been the person that sat down in predominantly white spaces or stepped into predominantly white spaces, it is a valued response when someone comes to you and talks to you and all those things. So I will acknowledge that. But the reason why we're here, though, is to talk about how you guys can do that, how you'll be able to go have these conversations with your people in your spaces so they're comfortable enough to do the same thing outside of their community. So I'll just ask a quick question I want you to think about, okay? How do you identify the different starting points? This is what we're talking about, right? The starting points for your congregations and your people. How do you identify the different starting points in your own pews, in your own churches, right? What we're talking about here is value added, right? How we can create these spaces where you can have these conversations. But you need to identify the different starting points for your people. How do you identify them is the question. How do you identify them? Just sit with that for a second. How do you identify the different starting points in your own pews? Okay. I'm going to ask my brother to step in on that one and give a little bit of insight to that. I know we talked about this yesterday.
We did.
Yeah, but give a little insight to that and then.
So I think one of the, I have to decide how much trouble I want to get myself into.
Exactly.
One of the things that I have, I'm just going to go for it. So one of the things that I have experienced in conversations about race is the woke white liberal superiority complex. The woke white liberal superiority complex sounds like this. Oh, you are so uninformed and you are over here. I am so informed and aware I am over here. You are not worth my conversation, only worthy of my judgment. Okay? I don't know about you, but most of us take one step in life at a time, right? Most of us take one step. Maybe you're really good and you can take 2 steps at a time. I think the key thing to understand is that you can only move your people from where they are one step, right? And so some of what we're going to get to in the next question are some of the core teaching points that I have found helpful in getting predominantly white folks to be like, oh, maybe there is something to this.
Yeah.
But the first thing is like, dispense with the woke white guilt. Like, it doesn't help anybody. You just come off sounding like a jerk and a know-it-all. Like, just let go of that because it's not helpful, especially when, you know, if you grew up like I did, which some of you did, right? Mm-hmm. Like, my high school was 10% African American. I then went to a college that was under 1% African American, right? I then served a community that's like 5 kids of color in a high school of 1,000, right? To say I'm in predominantly white spaces, that's an understatement. And so there's a level of which the lack of proximity is going to allow people to buy into assumptions that you may not think are true, but they do.
Yeah.
And shame is not a good motivator, especially in conversations like this. Bad motivations tend to yield bad results.
Yeah. Now, I'm on the other side of that and simply say, stop telling your people that your pastor, your other congregants in your congregations, that racism doesn't exist. Stop telling me that there's no such thing as institutional racism or structural racism, right? Stop telling me there's just an individual evil that is racism that we need to blot out, and there's no other such thing as, no other racism that exists. Stop it. Because you can't tell me you follow Jesus and say those things as well, okay? So we're just gonna, we'll leave that right there, okay? So that's on the complete other side of that. I will also say this, along the lines of what Brian said. We have an opportunity to enter into, you have an opportunity to expose this. How about a curiosity as a tool for truth, okay? So we'll enter into these discussions, and like Brian said, there'll be this sense of guilt that's pressed on, or there'll be this sense of, you don't know what you're talking about, there's no such thing as structural racism, there's no such thing as racism as it exists, it's individual, it's how people are treated. Whatever extreme it is, as soon as we hear that, we have an attitude, we have an opinion, is what I'll say, right? We'll get into those spaces, we'll have an opinion. I'm going to ask you, as you take these tools back to your people, to simply have a space of curiosity. So when you receive that person who says, Elder Allen, there is no such thing as racism, I know what that does to your heart. I know what that does to your mind. But what I'm asking, for the sake of this space, because what we want is to love a community, is to have a curiosity. And that curiosity does not have to affirm what that person is saying. That curiosity is understanding the length and the legacy of that individual to get to that spot. And once you understand that, it will make a little more sense as to why a Brian Wallace might say that. Well, he or she hasn't experienced that. And if we allow ourselves just simply to create a space where we are not judging individuals based on the first thing that comes out of their mouth, it will open up an opportunity for real community and hopefully move into a beloved community. Now, I say that as easily as I said it, and I know it's not, okay? So if you're taking notes, you need to write down curiosity, right?
Can I give an example of that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of my parishioners came to a Presbyterian meeting in 2014, which if you were in Pittsburgh Presbyterian in 2014, that was the year of racism, where we spent an hour at every Presbyterian meeting at the beginning discussing racism. He was livid, not happy, right? And we were talking afterwards, and he's like, I am so sick of hearing about racism. I am not racist. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I see what you post on Facebook, and I'm not sure, man. But because I'm highly conflict averse, I said, well, tell me a little more. He goes, look, I fought and died with people of every color in the trench in Iraq. I don't want to hear it about me being racist. He's like, I trust my life to people. I don't care what color they are. I don't want to hear anymore. Immediately, I was like, oh, he has a very different lens for conversations about racism, right? Because of his military service. And he had a point.
He did.
He's like, I have trusted my life to people who are black. I don't want to hear about being racist, right? It's a different conversation.
It's a different conversation.
But it would have been a complete bust if I hadn't have been like, hey, tell me more. That's interesting. And then I was like, oh, okay, now we've got a lens for that.
Yeah. And again, I can't say this enough. It's hard to do that. It's hard to be in the space where people are saying these things that aren't even your truth, which we're going to talk about in a moment, which aren't even your truth, and just simply rest in it and simply say, I hadn't thought about it, or even think it, I hadn't thought about it. Let's dive more into that non-racist, you're not a racist comment. I know it, and when I hear myself say it, I have heart palpitations, to be honest with you. But again, in relation to what I see, what I hear, and I'm just being clear here, this is not something that Brian and I were like, it'd be kind of cute for us to do this. No, we get this from our pastors, from the churches that we serve. We hear these conversations. We don't have these spaces to have these conversations. So if we're really going to do that, we need to be able to sit and just make those opportunities palatable so that someone can feel comfortable enough to take that first step. Because if they don't feel comfortable, they're going to be dismiss it and just move on and truly live into their racism. Okay? You didn't get in too much trouble there. You're okay. You were good, buddy. You were good there. So the next topic we want to talk about. So far we've talked about being able to enter into the space and reflect on your motivations. Okay? So we want to be able to reflect on our motivations for having this conversation. So today, our motivation is education. Our motivation is we think this is an important topic. We see a world that is so divisive. We want to be able to create spaces where beloved community can thrive. So that's our motivation, all right? The second thing we talked about was curiosity. You cannot have these conversations without being open to the curiosity of that individual. You need to be able to hear and see what that individual is experiencing in their life. I can't tell you enough how important it is for Brian to understand from me what it is like for me to live in this world as a person of color. Now, along with that, though, I have to be able to understand Brian grew up in a certain way as well. So when he says some things, which we're going to talk about a little later on, that I don't agree with, I need to be able to have a lens that says, I understand where this comes from. Let's explore this together, okay? So motivation, curiosity, okay? All that is wrapped in a big, blearing lens of white normative culture, okay? So, Brian, if I was going to ask you a question, what is white normative culture? What definition would you get to that?
Sure. So what I would say is white normative culture is very simply white is right. White is right. So I think there's two things though here. One is one of the things that I think is hardest for people who have spent time in exclusively white or predominantly white spaces is recognizing that there is a people of European descent culture that we all live in, right? They, like, when that is normal and that's all you've ever experienced, that is right, or that is therefore, like, because it is white, it is therefore right. And so one of the most helpful strategies that I have had in helping people who are white see this, and this works particularly well in Pittsburgh, is when you say to somebody, well, hey, what's the difference between somebody from West Virginia and somebody from Pittsburgh? You're all Appalachian people. Okay? Now, some of you will have heard the joke. What's the difference between someone from Pittsburgh and Morgantown? Pittsburgh people are just Appalachian folks who learn to read. I didn't say it. It's not my joke.
It's terrible.
I am not from here. This is not my joke, right? Right? But even within white culture, we understand that there are differences. Any of you who have spent any time in the South know there are differences across white culture. There's differences in California, right? You want to get people going, talk about coastal elites, right? There are differences in white culture. And that has been an avenue by which I've been able to say to folks, look, you even realize that within white people, there are differences in culture. You've got to understand that race also factors into that, right? So that has been one of the things that has been helpful, but it's been not saying, you don't get it. It's saying, well, just think about the differences even amongst people just like us who come from different areas of the country, right? My favorite example of this was when I got to college. Grove City College is highly diverse if you count different Christian traditions and weirdos, okay? So if you got the Pentecostals, the Presbyterians, the Catholics, the homeschool kids, and the missionary kids all mixed together, right? The cultural differences between kids who went to Christian school and this public school mainline kid were dramatic. I've used that as an example to be like especially amongst conservative circles, been like, ever met anybody who's homeschooled? And they're like, oh man, it's so much different. Okay, there it is, right? Helping them to recognize cultural differences even within the same race is a way to get people to begin to think about, oh, okay, you're right. There are nuances in white culture all the more, but the idea of like normal or right.
Yeah, and I think that's what ends up happening is we appropriate these cultural normities, white cultural normities, to to everyone, to how everyone should act, everyone should work, everyone should be
Right, communicate.
communicate, function in a
Volume of voice,
space.
yep.
You know, one of my favorite conversations is, you know, I was working in my office one day, and Brian is, many of you may not know this, but Brian is the staff kind of liaison for our CPM. And CPM is responsible for our candidates that go through our process of becoming pastors, ordained pastors. And he walks in my office, he closes the door, and he sits down, and I have a table right across from my desk. And he looks at me, he goes, "Our ordination exams are racist, aren't they?" And I said, "Yes, Brian, they are. They are." He said, "I was reading a couple," he had to, because of his status, he's able to see a couple of kind of ordination answers, things like that. And he said, "I can see how the question can not be relatable to some individuals who are in a different culture." And this is not even just a black, it's a black and minority, it's black and a white and female, it is one of those things. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. So again, lifting up this opportunity for us to acknowledge kind of this visible standard, it's not really invisible, it is really prominent, of white being right, allows us to settle in a space where we can come together and talk about those differences, not as something that is wrong, but as something that is God-sent, in giving dignity to those cultures in a way that, unfortunately, we live in a world that does not do that, if I can say it that way. What other space should we be able to do that but in this space of a church, right? Again, I know this is hard. I know this is something that, you know, even saying it out loud for some of you, taking this to my church and having this conversation would gives you heart palpitations, but it really is an opportunity for us to live into what I like to call, what Dr. King called a beloved community, which is very, very important. I think I'm going to pause here and ask a question for our gathered masses.
All right.
And our people online, if that's okay. One of the things that Brian and I did a lot of conversations about when we did the adult education class for one of our churches is just talking a little bit about our history as a nation. And, you know, we're talking about this white normative thing, so I think it's appropriate to kind of go into, you know, America and its history. And talked about this progression of Christian nationalism and what that means for us and how we got there. And, you know, I want to just try to show the interconnectivity between the racism and Christian nationalism. And through that conversation, we came upon some interesting data. By the year, 2042?
2045.
2045, white will no longer be the
Be the majority.
majority.
So, but more interesting is for children under the age of 18, there is no dominant culture. As of 2020, like there's still, it's roughly 49.7, 23, 13, and 6 and 3, right? So there are still more white babies and more white kids under the age of 18, but the majority of kids in the United States under the age of 18 are not white.
Yes.
I'm gonna blank on it, but like the 18 to 29 crowd, that'll kick in 2027.
27, yep.
And amongst working class, it's 2032. Among 65 and older, it's 2060,
Yeah.
right?
So the question, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's it.
The question is, what does that mean for the church? What does that mean for the church, friends? So there are mics at your tables.
There, Mike. And the reason we
And
want
the
you
reason-
to use mics is so people online can hear what's going
Yes.
on.
And this question's for people online too.
Sure.
What does that mean for the church?
I want is this?
Yeah, it's on.
It's on.
Yeah, it's on.
I just wanted to have you add something to that because I'm aware of those statistics, except for one other thing that I wanted you to address, which is because of geographic segregation.
Yes.
Even though these numbers are balancing out, that doesn't mean that the typical white kid in America is around lots of black
Sure.
kids or
Correct.
vice
Yes.
versa,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so
Go ahead. No, you go. Go ahead. No, you absolutely should go.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
It's so one of the interesting kind of points that has been raised, right, is like this is true if you sum up the whole nation, but it is very regionally oriented.
That's right.
As to how true that is. And so as an example, one of my former youth group students, she and her husband adopted a child who was a person of color. They were living in the Cranberry area and said, forget this, and moved to Atlanta. One of the main reasons for moving to Atlanta, his family's there, that was one, but they had to evaluate very honestly, culturally, where would it be the best and healthiest for them to raise their daughter, and Atlanta was a better option. And so I mentioned these statistics to my daughter, who's a junior in high school, and they surprised her. Well, what? Well, as I said, Hampton High School is still predominantly white, right? And so I think the other thing that I've noticed is that I do a lot of work in the youth ministry world, and some of the biggest youth ministry organizations in the country right now are, not surprisingly, are Hispanic Catholic en route, right? So I'm doing a training in Chicago in May. Over half the people who will be there are not white, and approximately a third of them are Hispanic Catholic. And so when you step back and look at the broader church, right, within the PCUSA, we're 92%?
95, 96. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, Mark, to your point, though, you know, and then I would love people to answer the question because it was intentional about what does that mean for the church. You know, I do think there's an opportunity for us to, if we take seriously our opportunity to be the church of the world, right, to recognize that and to be the voice, to be the light that highlights that opportunity for us to live into, you know, we need to cultivate a space where we're at least attempting to bring more culture to our spaces of worship and faith. You know, you're right, I can't do anything about the places where they're predominantly white, and you're not gonna be able to push up against individuals who don't look like you know, these homogenous. But as Brian said earlier, there's opportunity for you to grow and learn through your brothers and sisters of color, you know, without you having to share a specific space with them. That's intention. That's opportunity. You have to make that decision as a community of faith to do that, though. That's the key. And to what Brian said earlier, that allows you to be open to the possibility for whenever you have the availability to be around people of color, to be prepared for that opportunity, to live into that beloved community that we all desire and want for our communities of faith. So again, I'm gonna pause here again because I don't want to give too many of the answers of the question, is what does that mean for the church moving forward? No one wants to be the first one to answer. Yes.
Part of it is not being afraid of having the conversation. That I think you put it really well, having the space to open up, what is this feeling like for you? Tell me about how you feel about being in an all-white congregation or the other way around, right?
Yes.
I mean, we talk a lot about Sundays being the most segregated day of the week, so you have to be intentional about it.
You do.
It's not always going to be right there in your community.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? There's someone online?
Two comments from online. One, the church will not be the church of old. Denominations may fall, non-denominational unification churches will rise. There will be churches and institutions based on faith, not structure. And then another comment came in, faith communities will need to learn to be comfortable with discomfort in order to become the truly beloved community.
Comfortable with discomfort. That's very Cones. I like that. I like that. Any other comments? Any other comments for, what does that mean for the church? Okay. We're gonna have you guys talk a little bit about that when we're eating together and online. We're gonna put you in in a breakout room in about 15 minutes or so. And maybe you guys can flesh that out a little more when we have that time together. So again, just to review, because Brian and I were always, when we did our class, we always forgot to review. So motivation, curiosity, what does it mean to dismantle white normative culture, right? The importance of that, especially as a church, living into that beloved community. I touched a little bit on the Christian nationalism piece. We're going to save the big chunk of that for the end of our time together. But I know that's been a big topic for a lot of our churches these days, so we're going to say that toward the end. So with that, I'm gonna make a couple people uncomfortable here. I told Brian that I was going to do this yesterday, and he was like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." So one of the questions you're going to ask when we have our kind of time to eat together and breakout is, what is an unpopular opinion you hold about racism? And who is it unpopular with? What is an unpopular opinion you hold about racism? And who is it unpopular with?
Can I say one more thing before we?
Absolutely, Big Guy.
So, because this was, in addition, the other thing that's been helpful for me in having conversations with individuals who are white and addressing one of the objections has been, but that happened so long ago. Slavery was so long ago, right? And I was trying to think about one of the times that this came up in a conversation. The person I was talking to actually had a good understanding of science. So this worked really well with them. It may not work as well for you, but this is basically what it means, right? The effects of events in our lives do not decline in a linear fashion, right? So it's not like over 10 years, the effect that something happened 10 years ago then goes to zero, right? It follows a decay curve. In other words, it gets less and less and less, but it doesn't just disappear. And one of the things that historians talk about is that over time, historical events continue to have an impact on the present in a pattern that is more like decay than flat out going to zero, right? So think about this in your own life. Yesterday, I asked Ralph, I said, give me one of the most consequential moments in your life. And right away, you remembered.
Yep.
Now that event does not ring in your head every day.
It does not.
But it's still back there.
It is.
Right? I talked about a decision I made when I was 11 years old that has impacted my life to this day, right? And so helping people to understand that just because something's in the past doesn't mean it doesn't have effects in the present.
That's right.
And again, using examples of like, well, you went to college here. How does that affect your life today, right? Helping, again, people to see, yes, you're right, slavery, that is in the past, but it still has lingering, a lingering effect. The other thing, we did talk about this, was the idea of a common starting line. And so, I won't name names like I did yesterday, but if you look at Allegheny County, the starting line at which a kid starts has a lot to do with what high school they will graduate from. Now, my kids, I've already said, go to Hampton High School. Hampton High School is very highly rated, one of the top 5 in Allegheny County, but it is not the highest. And if there are certain places, if it were really important to us that our daughter got into Yale, we would have made different educational choices about where we sent our kid, okay? The idea, again, and this works for white folks, right? To say, look, not everyone has the same starting line. Not everyone starts at the same point in life. And it's just mean to be sitting on third base because you were born there and making fun of people who can't get to first, right? But that is another where, even within the white dominant culture, you can point out some of those differences, right? And help people see there's not a common starting line because you don't think there's a common starting line either. It's just more inconvenient when it comes up to race because it makes you uncomfortable. But it's not a common starting line, right? So the Low kids and the Wallace kids definitely come from privilege, but not as much privilege as other families.
That's right. So from the cheap seats.
Now we can go to your.
Well, from the cheap seats, I'm going to add to that for a little bit is this. You know, I love that you shifted a little bit to the slavery piece because I hear that a lot. I say, well, I had nothing to do with slavery. My family didn't even own slaves, so why are we still talking about it? Why are we still talking about slavery? And I said, well, Brian made a good point. He's absolutely right. In addition to that, there's this little thing called cotton, right? That slavery helped to develop this country through. So I told this to Brian when we were talking about this yesterday. The fact that we're sitting here on this land, in this place, has everything to do with chattel slavery. Because this country was able, and I'm talking to the people online too, this is very important, to use that leverage, this cotton, this thing called cotton, to create debt with other countries in the world, right? To borrow money, to barter, to trade, to build the economy that we are privileged with today. So you can't tell me, when you say things like, there is no slavery or my family didn't own slaves, sure, that is correct. That may be correct for you. But it does not change the fact that we are not privileged from that. And just to B's point, that makes the starting line much different for people of color. Okay? So, when you enter into these spaces where we're trying to create a space where we can have conversation, there are some things that we need to step into and talk about. We may disagree about them, but that is reality of the life we live today. Nothing makes me more passionate or gives me more heart palpitation, to keep using that language, is when someone says to me, we need to stop talking about slavery. We need to stop talking about this thing that happened in the past. Okay, yes, I would love nothing more than to stop talking about this thing. But we could only stop talking about it when we have rectified our past so it has become, so our future can be better. And we haven't done that. And the reason why we haven't done that is, one of the reasons, because the church hasn't done that, at least done it in an effective way, in my opinion. Okay? So I'm going to get off my TED Talk right there. I'm going to come back to where we were.
I mean, in one sentence, everyone in the United States has benefited from the institution of slavery in economic sense.
Yeah.
And if people push back, the interstate highway system we all benefit from. The economic system that created that was a combination of slavery and the fact that our country didn't get blown to pieces during World War II.
Yeah. So my question I had was, what is the unpopular opinion you hold about
you get
racism?
To go first.
And who is it unpopular with? So I need you to hear this. This is not a vacuum. I need you to hear this. I absolutely hear the extreme of individuals who will say that racism doesn't exist, who say there absolutely is no such thing as structural or institutional racism. Okay, those are all true, and I'm gonna set those here for now. But this is coming from my experience, and I think it's relevant for your opportunity to sit and be with the people in your communities, okay? I have run across more recently in my life than ever before well-meaning white advocates. So they will say, Brian said a little bit of this earlier, they will say that they are an advocate. They are a racist, they're anti-racist, sorry, they're anti-racist. That was not intentional, I promise. They are anti-racist, they are advocate, they stand with me,
They have done the work.
They have done the work, all the things, right? But in reality, their intent is self-love. There's an opportunity to be performative so that you all can see them, we'll say Brian Wallace, sitting next to me and saying the right things. And it's the loudest in the room that's saying, why don't you say these things with me? Okay? I call it checking the box. Here's the difference. I think in those situations, those individuals do not understand what liberation means. Okay? So I'm going to pause real quick and ask this room and those online to define liberation for me. What is liberation? It's quiet in here. What is liberation? So we have a room full of people, Brian, who would say that they're advocates.
Yes.
Who would say they live and breathe and try to do the right thing. Anti-racist, right? Amen? I don't hear anyone in there. Okay. I'm just checking. People online too, you would say, I'm an anti-racist, at least attempt to be. You struggle with it, but you fight with it. Okay? I'm telling you, I need you to understand what liberation means if you're going to say that. So I'm going to ask again, what does liberation mean? You said they got it.
How about to be free of those things that hold you back?
3 of those things that
Free of those things that hold you back.
that's free of those things that hold me back. Yes, yes. That's really good. That's really good. What can you name some of those things?
Having the same opportunity to, in schooling, to have the same opportunities for buying a house or buying a car, to have the same opportunities as getting a job, to have the same opportunities to vote, to have the same opportunities to run for office and to be elected, to help govern those people that you're elected by.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Somebody else raised their hand.
I was thinking about being able to walk into a store, walk down the street or walk into a store and not be judged because of the color of your skin or of your status. Being liberated, and that's an external factor. Internal factor is to be liberated from feeling judged because of
Yes.
the color of your skin
Yes.
or your status.
Yes. So, yes. So both of those are absolutely. Somebody's online. Yes.
2 online again. One is freedom, freedom to do, to be, to go anywhere. And then the other comment is the kingdom of God. Truly see the face of God in all living beings.
I like that. I like that. So, thank you for those answers. I really appreciate that. I like to talk about this in terms of freedom versus liberation because we love to use that name freedom. We do. And I appreciate you guys are on the right track, and I really, really appreciate that. But I want you to think about this is in this way. Freedom is a static situation. You are free to do this thing, right? Amen? Okay? Liberation is a gospel-led life that allows for the dignity of the community, for me, historically, and physical needs, okay? So freedom is one thing. Like, this is a static situation where you're free to go to the store. You're free to walk down the road. Liberation is understanding why that road is unsafe to begin with for me, right? Liberation is understanding. We all heard the old adage of people washing down the river, and we're standing at the end of the river and we're pulling bodies out of the river, right? That's freedom. You're free to get out of the water now, Brian.
Yep.
Praise be to God. Liberation is going upstream and finding out why the bodies are falling in the water, right? What I have noticed is for well-meaning white individuals are all about freedom and not about liberation, okay? They're all about looking good and saying the right things, but when it comes to dignity and even asking myself, what is liberation to me, they're nowhere to be found. It is more performative than an opportunity to liberate me as a person of color, okay? So what I would say to that, my friends, is what's an unpopular opinion is, in some ways, that is the most detrimental thing to our communities of faith. Because you'll have that person in your church who says, hey, you know, I went to a march this weekend. I did this thing and checked the box, right? So everyone around them will be like, oh, well, maybe I need to be doing that thing. And if I'm not doing thing, what does that say about me? And I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing those things. Let's be clear. But there's an opportunity here for us to recognize that true liberation comes through asking, relating to, understanding those individuals so that we can all move that to the beloved community together. I will tell you, and this is coming from the work that I've done in this presbytery, I have felt the pulse of the well-meaning white individual, the lack of dignity for myself, lack of dignity for my common brothers and sisters of color through that lens than I have the racist pastor who tells me that there is no such thing as racism. Okay? And that is more evil and centenary in our churches than anything else. I know. So what I'm asking you before we move into dinner here is to recognize the opportunity when you're in these spaces to have these open conversations about what it truly means for us to lean into having conversations about racism. It doesn't mean checking a box. It doesn't mean, hey, did we go to that march this week? That can be a resource and opportunity for us to live into. But the real question is, have we asked our brothers and sisters of color what they need and what they want? Plain and simple, okay? If we can't do that, or we're not willing to do that, what are we doing as a church? Okay? Again, I've said this before. I know this is hard. I know this is an opportunity for us to be really, really uncomfortable. But if we can't do that, then no wonder we have this us versus them mentality in this world. If we can't come to church, a community of faith, and look each other in the eye and say, you know what, I don't know that this really constitutes racism. And you can't say, I know for sure it constitutes racism, and you can't sit there and we can't create a space for that conversation to happen. You are not helping me. You are not helping people of color. You are not. Because when Brian said earlier about that one step, that doesn't happen if we decide to move away from that. Because you're going to be in your corner, you're going to be in your corner, and never again come together. What I see in this country is people are putting gasoline to that division and letting it on fire so you can't even cross paths. And we need to be the extinguisher as a church. And if we're not willing to do that, man, God help us. I really mean that, okay? Is there anything we want to make a point before we go to eat?
So I don't have to share my unpopular opinion?
Man, yes, you do. You do have to answer your unpopular opinion. Yes.
I have two. Amongst my more conservative brothers and sisters, the critique is always when I talk about institutional racism. That's where I get pushback. No racism, personal is private, that's fine. My more unpopular opinion in this room will be talking about structural racism is often a cop-out for progressives who don't want to actually do anything. It's really easy to talk about systems this and systems this, and the system is so racist, and not do a darn thing. And so I often will push back on kind of an overemphasis on structural racism. The other piece that I've gotten weird pushback on is when I've been like, well, look, there's very clear evidence of systemic racism here, and people are like, well, you shouldn't look for evidence. That's bizarre to me. I don't understand that. And so I've heard that a lot. Like, Brian, you're too focused on looking for evidence. Well, that's how I work. You better have something to back it up. And you can't just be like, well, that's racist. Well, no. Like, some things aren't racist, right? Like, I come out of the natural sciences. The beauty of gravity, it really doesn't care. Right? There are things in this world that are not racially dependent. Gravity is one of them. And so that's where sometimes I get myself in trouble, is I'm like, look, I hear you saying that the system is racist. What's your evidence for that?
So what I said to Brian, this is where he had.
That took a long pause yesterday. Ralph was like.
What I said to Brian was, where we disagree a little bit, is sometimes the system manufactures those individuals that have those opinions and have that, right? And there's data for that too.
Sure.
I'm not saying that doesn't exist, because you and I
see
talked
a lot
about
of
that.
cop-outs.
Yeah, but sometimes the system manufacture those individuals who have those opinions. And there's an opportunity, again, for us as a church to recognize that. And if we can't talk into the system first, in some cases, we are not able to get to those individuals, because those individuals rely on what they heard through the system to validate how they walk and talk and go through the world. So while I think Brian is right in some instances, I do think the system is a culprit in that as well. So that's where we disagree a little bit.
It's not that I don't think the system is real. I think systems are often an excuse to deny individual responsibility.
I think sometimes that's right.
I think that's, because people will push back on evangelicals when they say, well, the problem about racism is it's sin, right? I remember either Tony Jones or Brian McLaren saying, look, if it were a sin problem, the church would have fixed this first, right? So you can't just talk about it in terms of sin, but there is a level of individual responsibility by which systems change when people change,
Yeah.
right? And what I always go to is, like, if you don't think that systems change when individuals change, the Civil Rights Act passed because people voted.
Yeah.
Right? And so there is a level of individual responsibility that I think we share, and that we need to understand that racism is an individual challenge, not just a systemic one. And we need to own our own ongoing bias in how we engage in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Our food's almost here. I'm going to ask another question for you to think about, not to answer, but for you to think about, okay? So who would call themselves an advocate here? Who would say that I'm an advocate? I am someone who's an anti-racist advocate. Yes, no one's going to say I'm not. No, I didn't answer the liberation thing. No, really, I truthfully, right? I would say that most of you in here would say, at least I attempt to be an advocate, to be on the right side of things, to have these conversations that are hard, to make myself fully aware of where I stand, not only where I stand, but to be helpful in the community where I see my brothers and sisters are struggling. Amen? Okay.
But I struggle, I'm like Brian, I'm risk adverse. I don't want to have that
Yeah.
conversation, so I came tonight. That this was going to be hard for me.
Yeah. So Sue, my beloved colleague and friend, has said out loud that she struggles because she's risk averse. So it's hard for her to have the conversations. She believes all these things, but it's hard for her to have these conversations, which I'm sure is the case for many of you on here. And I understand that, because Brian, who's a 9 in Enneagram, will say the same thing. But to his credit, he has evolved and grown into someone who forces himself, understanding the conflict. The difference, though, Sue, and those of you who feel that way since we had this conversation, is I think for the individuals who are conflict averse, what they've found out is when they have passion about something and are knowledgeable enough and resourced enough to have a conversation, they're more confident to go into the spaces or create a space where they can have these conversations. It's the lack of understanding and knowledge that it heightens this anxiety of, I don't want to have this conversation. Okay, fine, there is no such thing as racism, right? But when we have the tools, this is why we're here, to combat that language, combat that understanding, we are more open to the possibility of having these conversations where they need to happen. Okay? You were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so one of the words that I hate and that I don't use is, I don't think we should call ourselves allies. I get really
I didn't say ally.
What? No, you did.
Okay.
I'm airing another unpopular opinion.
Okay.
I don't think we should call ourselves allies. Because at the end of the day, when Ralph and I walk down the street, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
Right? My ultimate fate is not bound up with Ralph's. And so I'm really hesitant to use the word ally. I liked what you said. You strive to be an advocate. That's about as good as I'll get.
Yeah.
Like, that's about as far as I'll go. I strive, but man, that word ally implies a level of solidarity that I am really uncomfortable with, and I think can be a little presumptive, and let me say it, performative.
So
Because I don't use ally in general. Like,
I know
I
you
don't use
don't.
ally with LGBTQ, race. I just don't use the word because I think our fates are intertwined in a way that when it comes to this conversation, they're actually
not.
empirically not.
Brian, do you think there's a difference between being an advocate and being an ally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Karen and I want to know what it is.
So I would say it's what Ralph said, right? I strive to understand. Right? I strive to be aware, but like I am still really thoroughly white. Right? And I am still really bound into the culture from which I've come. And
but you understand that
I do.
But you are better for attempting and knowing other culture.
Yes.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I would go as far as I strive to.
Yeah, I get that. So I wanted to put a little meat on the bone of the performative piece that I talked about earlier. Again, this is going to give me a little bit of trouble too. So we've all, as an advocate, we've all had our kind of justice story. Like, hey, I marched in something 2 weeks ago. I was witness to someone being racist, and I said something to the individual, however we want to describe it, however we want to name it, okay? I would ask you, as an advocate, or one who attempts to be an advocate, okay? How often, when you are retelling these moments of injustice, where you are a participant, are you the hero?
Are you the hero? Yep, I knew where you're going.
How often, when you tell this story, John, Bob's laughing, how often are you the hero? How often are you the subject? Because I'm telling you, that is performative. There's an opportunity for us as people of faith in the spaces we create to mirror this attempt at advocacy in a way that doesn't make you the white savior. It offers an opportunity for you to, again, lean heavily into what your brothers and sisters of color need and want from you. So, your homework after you leave here is go and rehearse these times when you know that, man, this was injustice. I know this was terrible. I was witness to it. I said something. I did something. I want you to think about how many times you are the hero in that story. And if you are, well, you need to rethink of how you approach when you make the decision to act and how you act. Does that make sense to everyone? Because I just don't want to leave. I see a lot of head shaking, yes. But I want to make sure, because this is important. Because this is my unpopular, and I know people are like, man, Ralph, you're really getting on the people in the room. I'm not really getting on you or the people online. I'm just naming the thing that gets in the way of the church actually having these good conversations.
So you're saying, Ralph, that when our desires to become the hero, that gets in the way of true making space for safety.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And because it becomes more about look
Yeah.
at me, I'm able to solve this.
Just look at me, I'm able to solve this. I did this. We did this as a church. And not about, Matthew 25 says, Jesus said, we're supposed to be it makes it less that, more of the look at us.
But what you're talking about is really messy and extremely painful.
So can I share?
So let me affirm, it is really messy, it is really painful, and it doesn't happen like tomorrow. I don't expect that. But remember why we're here. We're here to create a space for us to have these conversations and be comfortable. And if you're not willing to say it out loud, someone else is struggling with it, then that's not creating a good safe space for this conversation to happen. So Sharon, if you can't say out loud, Ralph said, I can go like 3 or 4 deep and talk about how I was the hero. And I'm wrestling with that right now. Someone else is wrestling with it too. And if you can't say that out loud, we're not having a safe conversation about how we feel about racism or not.
Back to my original statement, fear keeps us from getting into the mess.
Yes. Fear gets us getting there. Yeah, you have a quick statement.
And we're going to break for dinner, but so one of my convictions when Ralph and I started this conversation in 2020 was how much more comfortable I was saying the things that I was saying because I wasn't the pastor of the church I used to be the pastor of. There's a tremendous sense of conviction around that, of like, shoot, would I have said this as the associate pastor at Hampton Presbyterian Church? That's not an indictment on the church, by the way, that's an indictment on me, okay? So that summer, it was the summer after, I hoodwinked one of our most conservative churches into letting me preach on June 19th. This was very intentional. And I preached at them, My closing line was, if you don't stand for racial reconciliation, then you are not a Bible-believing Christian. Because you would not be sitting here today. And I hammered away at them, and I was really proud of myself. And then I showed it to Ralph, and Ralph was really proud of me. He said, B, you need to preach this sermon at every church you preach at this summer. I didn't ask for that. I had to preach at some fairly prominent places that summer. And all of a sudden, that fear that Sharon just talked about was, oh man, I felt really comfortable in that space saying it because I know them and they know me, and I can needle them. And I knew how to get at them. But it was a real test of, okay, it's one thing to sit in the chapel with Ralph and in your own little world and say these things, but are you willing to say these things in a pulpit that they don't know you well? And are you willing to risk the people walking out? Are you willing to risk the people who won't shake your hand at the end as someone who likes to be liked? But I couldn't say no. And so I got to preach that sermon 7 times over the summer because Ralph wouldn't let me stop preaching
It
it,
was a good sermon.
right? But it gets to that point, right? It was like I was really comfortable in this space saying these things to these people. And then when Ralph was like, that can be performative, buddy. Why don't you say it everywhere you go? I was like, oh,
Yeah.
right? And so that's the difference of like it's where you feel comfortable saying it now versus where you would feel comfortable saying it because you believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot more to get to, but we're getting hungry. It's a little after 5. So Carla, there are sheets of paper with questions on them on the table. We will type them into the chat for those who are online for you to mull over while we're having a meal. If we could have 1 or 2 per table, Carla, that would be great. And could you bring one up here? I'm going to say them out loud too, because I forgot to bring one up here. I forgot to bring one up here. So what I'd like you to do, if you could go to this table right here, that'd be great. Thank you very much, buddy. There are a handful of questions, one of which we talked about. Actually,
And we have not talked about question 4 yet.
We haven't talked about
question.
question-
You might want to hold off on that one.
Yep. So there are a few questions. Here are the questions for those online before we write it in the chat. How have your motivations changed for engaging in conversations about race? What is an unpopular opinion you hold about racism? Who is it unpopular with? So an unpopular opinion, Brian and I gave examples of that, but an unpopular opinion is I don't believe that there is structural racism. I don't believe there's institutional racism. I don't, yada, yada, yada. Those are unpopular opinions. What is a core concept, or everyone's a racist, everyone's a racist, we should all learn how to be anti-racist. That may be an unpopular opinion among your people. What is a core concept for you that is central to discussions about race? What is a core concept for you that is central to discussions about race? And for fun, because we're going to talk about this when we come back from dinner, what is the connection between congregational vitality and the conversation about racism? What is the connection between congregational vitality and the conversation about racism? Okay? We're going to give ourselves about 6 o'clock, 40 minutes.
6 o'clock.
Yep, 6 o'clock. We're going to give ourselves 40 minutes. Thank you guys from online. I hope you hang on. Hope you get a meal or something and you come back because, we're going to talk about Christian nationalism. No one wants to miss that, by all means. So thank you for your time, and we'll be right back.
What should they know about dinner?
So for those inside, dinner is served out here. If you walk out, you can go along the table. There are plates and utensils and all the things. Yes? Would you like to pray us into the meal? No?
All right, let's pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this time to gather, to share in conversation, to be reconciled to the fullness of the gospel of light and liberation and hope. We pray that you might bless our meal and the hands that prepared it and the conversations around the table so that we might be more reflective of your grace and your mercy and truth. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let me turn it off.
Oh, you stopped recording?
No, I just turned it off now.
Oh, you did? Good.
Yeah, I just literally did it. Yep.
So turn it off.
Okay. Hold it down.
I think it's the bottom button. Yeah. Yeah. Hold down the bottom button and it'll power off.
Oh, I got it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit with congregational vitality, like that gap of reconciliation. And if we're living into that, then that would mean we not only speaking to it, but don't leave our brother and sister behind. That is not, right? That is not where we are. That's where that performative gap is. So when we talk about vitality, Brian and I want to talk about, get more theological. Like, what does that mean for us in the church?
different thing. I think some of these questions, I'm on another side of this. So many of it is, you know, we've lived with it all our lives, so, you know, it doesn't, I think it's necessary to talk about it, to get through it, you know, but, it takes discussion, takes discussion. Right. And that's not the case with everybody. Right, right. It's not, right. You're right, right. Yeah, there's a problem. I was, what was it, a couple weeks ago, the Huey Highland Garnett weekend. Reverend Cannon left a paper, and the first thing on that paper was, you need to know the people in your community to establish trust. And if you can't do that, you'll never go anywhere. And it should.
Stop being self-deprecating. You're lovely, we want you to talk.
said a no, it's fine, so he just said, I guess Brian said no.
That's what I'm saying, it's been all your life.
Yeah,
You know.
that's right. So he has a trauma, so when he was in
Yeah, anytime we go down the street, he goes to 25. We can be on the highway, see a police truck, he goes to 25.
So Alan, did something happen, or is that just something extra happened to you that way?
Slow down when you're police. He doesn't even know he does it. Do you realize you do that? See? I notice it. Automatic.
And nothing has to do with power. You're a female. You can't imagine. You walk down the street and anything has certain characteristics are nervous. That is life. Because nothing may have happened to you.
So that was my point. It's just all of our lives. Yeah? Right.
Something may have happened.
Right.
It's
It
just that
could,
it doesn't
right.
happen.
Doesn't have to be. And you know, when Ralph was, that's what I was saying about the thing. This is our forever experience in our community. And it goes back so far that I'll give you a perfect example. And Karen, you brought it up. Or did you bring it up? You said my name is Karen, but my last name is too large. How many people in here have their last name on there?
Yeah, like Jenny.
Right. Alan and I have it. It's automatic. I don't even know why. I don't even know why. See, they probably don't, but it's a habit that we don't even know. Certain things is just so automatic that, you know.
What other things can you tell us is automatic that we wouldn't know?
Some years ago, I went to a conference in California, Orange County. Oh, it wasn't a concert, it was a conference.
Oh, conference. I think it's a concert.
One of my colleagues and I rented a car, and she and I drove over to the coast, and all the nice little shops and everything were went in a little shop. And the clerk said, "Would you like a receipt?" And she said, "No." I made my purchase. "Would you like a receipt?" She said, "No," and I said, "Yes." And she says, "No, you don't need a receipt." And I said, "Yes, I do." And after we left, she says, "Anita, why did you insist upon having a receipt?" I said, "Because I probably have relatives who were hung or accused of stealing." And my mother said, "You better always have a receipt." I mean, so there's some, that's the residue. Yeah, right. Yeah. You know, and I didn't feel threatened, but it's automatic. Certain things are just
Never happened to you, but
no, right, right.
if it did,
Right, it never happened, but I was taught that you always have a receipt. Then you can prove that you purchased it and you didn't steal it.
I hate plastic bags.
Wait.
I went into Home Depot and I was taking some food and I bought some cookies. I decided not to put it in a plastic bag. And so I walked out, I just walked out the store without a bag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they didn't stop.
Right, they didn't.
Right. Yep.
And I don't, you know what I mean, like that's something that I don't worry about.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So something that we can assume about also even, you know,
Yeah.
For example, but it's not my case, but mostly second or third generation, so which is their born here in US. So they don't speak Korean, they don't speak English, so, but, you know,
How surprising.
Right, all the time. All the time.
But I'll tell you something funny about that. I know someone, I would say we're friends. She's in Mexico, Baja, California. She views herself as a progressive white Presbyterian, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she, you know, a lot of women here come. So she lives in this expat community. And she, like, when the baseball club came to town next door, she still lives in that expat community. People in that expat community, you can tell people to speak English. Why don't they have such an issue in Mexico?
Oh, wow.
So that's how white black people are.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in another country, they're living in another country, where the language is Spanish.
And they want to make you speak English.
It doesn't even occur to them that they're something, saying something crazy. And you have to be willing to say, you know how crazy it is. For them to even think about it, because they don't even, and they spend all day talking to white people that speak English.
They'll speak English.
Revelation. You want to hear
considered racist.
Why would it be an assumption?
But might not be true.
Shouldn't have been true.
I'll ask you 100 questions.
Oh, they just haven't joined.
Exactly.
It looks like everybody didn't join. I'm sorry about that.
Based on our, yeah, exposures.
Anybody while meeting?
I think you're right. But I don't know if it's unpopular. Maybe you think it's unpopular, but it might not be. Well, I guess it would be your perception you think it's unpopular. And he says it's sin. Right? Yeah.
I think he's right.
Right. Right.
Or somebody can start fighting.
Right. I'm a good person. I don't think I'm hurting anybody. Kind of. Right. Being truthful. Being.
Craft and Ingram, ministry.
What did you call it? Unpopular opinion about race.
Unpopular opinion about racism. I don't know what. I don't know. I haven't.
I know he's appropriate, but I believe people can not a racism, but a discrimination. Even if it's the same race, there's a discrimination between.
Meaning.
Depends on their wealth and or. I noticed that when I was in Georgia, and 99% of white population, but of course, they divided because of their wealth. So the church itself is in the middle of the wealthy and not wealthy of the community. So when they're all wearing or they were told that bags of for for women. So someone I know, they brought like almost like $2,000 of bags, and the other ones, and there's a little bit.
Yeah. And a Birkin bag. It's 20 pounds.
What?
Yeah.
$3,000 bags is cheaper for them. So mostly they wear the like 10,000 over. Yeah, it's only one bag.
Yeah.
But however, that is, of course, there's nothing for them because they live in a like a multi-million. So that's why
It's no big deal to them.
popular one is like discriminating. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Even in Korea, even in other countries.
I've never seen that show, the haves and the have-nots. I've never seen it, but I'm assuming it's about people that have versus those that don't have.
I mean, if you assume that racism is us against them, that would be everything. Discuss it like this, especially like racism in the United States. I would
been thoughtful responding.
Yeah.
And because this is a capitalist society, it's gonna take a long time.
The first step is
That's right.
didn't include everyone.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna say,
I'm an elder, I'm not a pastor. I haven't studied the Bible, but I have studied the Bible. But there's a saying, as a man thinketh, so is he. Now, if that is true, if you don't think that, it won't be that way. Let me explain. Let me explain. In marketing, which you heard all this already, in marketing, all companies and corporations, when they do marketing to get leads and how they get redlining and real estate and all of that. But if you train your salespeople not to think that way, what I'm saying is, I had the experience of working with a company that the vice president of the company came down to visit my office because the company wanted to know how I was converting so much leads, and they was bad leads. It's how the individual salesman thought. He went with me on one of the appointments. It was at Burroughs Court up on the hill. He said, "Are you going in there?" I said, "Yeah." She requested information. Knocked on the door. Spotless. Grandma opened the door. Showed her. And anytime you're in that situation, the company said, try to get her turned down. And she said, "Is this a much work?" My district was converting so many of those leads because they didn't have the way of thinking that way.
but,
And there's scripture on that too.
but what you said,
I don't know, were you saying that based on what, I mean, you had something to say.
Yeah, what I was
But,
saying, yeah.
but what you said, but everybody's not thinking that way. That's the problem,
That's it. You're right.
right? Because,
Everybody's thinking,
Well, I mean, I
you
also.
said it won't change.
yeah, you said it won't
She said
change.
it's not
I
popular.
think the
That's not
system
popular.
is also, like, I think it's, yes, I agree, to some degree, as a person thinks they will do. But I also think the system is set up to keep it all that way.
Right, right.
And
For the-
like you said, redlining or whatever,
Mhm.
but also native reserves in the United
Yeah.
States, and like, there's a lot of things that have to be done.
It's set up,
A strong
the system is set up that there's gonna be so many different.
well,
That's right.
I gotta go
Oh,
take
okay.
care of
All right.
Caitlin and the dog.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
see you guys on Sunday.
See you Sunday. Thank you.
Steve. Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's both there.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think when you go to places that have been under apartheid, the colonialism has been cut, it doesn't really, so many things don't change. It's just
Who knows? Yeah, 400 years. Yeah, but not long enough, because we still have the residue.
And we still have slavery.
Oh, yeah, that too,
Middle
that too,
passage.
yeah.
Black, you know, chattel
too.
slavery, it's,
The whole trafficking.
yeah.
supposed to be outlawed. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they're on the West Coast. Sure, yeah. It is, yeah. Happy to bless everybody. I came to the United States from India, and with the British Navy, and I'm sure he wasn't on the top of that list on that ship. His grandfather. No. Right, that's right. Yes. I wanted to ask, does anybody know what that little pancake, what was that? What is that? Yeah. It was kind of bland, but it wasn't bad, but I'm just. Yeah. I've seen that you put it on you use it to put the, right?
Yeah. Well, we
It's sort of like in the Hispanic, they have the little flat
They have probiotic mixed berries that my grandson eats.
Oh, you gotta. Oatmeal or
I don't know what they are.
cookies. Oh, I'm sorry.
Touch everything.
I'm gonna do one of these, and I'm happy. Thanks so much. Thank you.
but
Huh? Cookies.
Korean is more, the straightforward using the chopstick and Japan and China. Japan and China, they don't have a spoon, but they use now they have a spoon right now, but they use it hand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Korean, no.
In a lot of the African countries, they use the bread and in the stew kind of stuff. Yeah.
But Korean chopstick and spoon is all together.
Yeah.
Always. Okay.
No forks.
No forks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because chopsticks are very tiny.
Yeah.
It's very little together. So that's why we can pick any, even the single rice, we can pick it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little bit,
No, you're not recording.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not. Because your red light has to be on.
The red light has to be on?
Yep. Now you're recording.
I thought that was muted.
No, that's recording.
All right, hopefully my voice came through.
If nothing else, it also picks it up in the back.
Okay.
Because I record on these and through the system.
Okay. Hi, bud.
I've gotten some good pointers. I have a question for you guys. Have you seen a influence model called Spectrum of the Allies?
I have not.
It's an interesting. Do you have
Yeah.
30 seconds? I got this at ACLU training.
Yep.
They put people in buckets. They call this is neutral on any topic. These are opponents, but these are active opponents. These are passive opponents. These are active allies. These are passive allies. And much like you said, they believe that through influence, you can move a person one spot. So what you try to do is move the neutrals to passive, you try to do this. Then, in a very un-Christian-like way, you forget about these clowns.
Right.
Because
Yes.
you're wasting
Yes.
you're wasting your time.
I would agree with that.
Gotcha.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Just wasting your time.
Yep.
If you can turn these guys into being neutral,
Yes.
you can change the game.
Change the dynamic of the game. Yeah.
Yep.
And I
That's
think
interesting.
it's an interesting model.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love that one-step portion of that as well, because it allows for people to stay within themselves and move just enough. Yeah. Thank you, Bob.
I picked up some pointers. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. All right, we want to bring everybody back in together. You guys are having good conversations. I think we're back on line 2. Thank you.
What?
We were never in the way.
No.
You're never
We're
in the
not.
way, Lenore. You're never in the way.
If you want to be fully out of the camera shot, you can move over one seat.
But you're
and then you'd
you're
be fully out.
But
for
you're
sure.
fine. You are so fine. For those of you online, when we post this recording, Brian and I offered just a little resource for Christian nationalism. We're going to talk a little bit about this at the end. And how we laid it out is just naming some of the myths that we hear about Christian nationalism. And we aligned that not only with our history as a country, but with our beliefs as a denomination, as PCUSA Presbyterians, and people of faith in our confession. So when we post this online, we will post this resource with it, so you'll be able to have it as well. But people here have it at their tables, so be able to use. But before we get into any of that, you were asked to have good conversations about 4 questions. We're going to save the last question, what is the connection between congregational vitality and the conversation about race, to be the intro to our last portion for our next 50 minutes together. So I'll ask if we have microphones out there, which I think we do. Would someone from each table be willing to just give a little summation of the conversation about how have your motivations changed for engaging in conversations about race? And online as well. We can't forget about our people online. If we didn't lose them all to
dinner.
To dinner. Anyone at all? We are having arguments on who's going to speak in the room, friends, about who's going to speak in the room. Anyone?
So I'm not going to.
No, you're fine.
You're fine.
You're fine.
I'm not going to remember everything, but I think a lot of things that our table talked about, particularly the white people at the table, was just generationally how ignorant we were, how little contact we had, and how little we even understood about why that was. So a lot of our own education about race relations, the racial situation in the country, either came from watching the civil rights actions on TV or came on later in our lives. But we, looking back on it, the impact of racial segregation in our housing patterns is so strong in this country.
Yeah.
And it certainly governed most of my life and the lives of other people. The one thing I mentioned for myself was that most of my encounters with anger over bringing up racial discrimination came as a journalist. So if I would write a story about, some instance of that, I would get calls every day. I mean, every morning after such a story would run, I would get those calls that you've all talked about.
Yeah.
My family never owned slaves. Why do you keep talking about this? Why do you write stories about slavery like it's still a reality, and that kind of thing? But I was saying that for myself, I believe I also, I felt I used it as kind of a shield because I was officially not allowed to get involved. I had to be neutral. So I used it as a shield for not going deeper into dealing with these issues because I was writing stories about it. Wasn't that enough? So that was my personal experience.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So what Mark and Table 1 will call, talked about basically was the generational lens and how it shifted from those of us who are a little older, who are here in the room, and how in their vocation, Mark specifically, who was here, who was a writer for the paper, used that as an opportunity to speak right into during the civil rights movement, but also as a shield to not go deeper into the work and into the understanding, not only individually, but within his framework. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's a good summary to do.
I think so.
Yeah. What about table 2? That's there in the corner, table 2. We are still on question 1.
Oh, no, I have all kinds of microphones.
Karen?
I don't understand why I'm the only one that will talk at the table, but. How has your motivations changed for engaging in conversations about race? I just think I think that by not addressing it, we are missing wonderful opportunities to know more about people's culture and their experiences in life.
Yes.
And just Anita and Alan and Jen shared just unbelievable stories just now about their experience of being people of color in this country. And by opening a sacred space to hearing what people experience, it changes your whole perspective.
It does.
I mean, I have no idea what Jen has been through.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful to hear assumptions. And Alan would like to talk now.
I'll just keep it short. I believe, from my experience, racism is a white problem today.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. That's true, and thank you.
Yes. Would number 3 like to share? Yes. Number 3. Or if you'd like to, we can move on to what is unpopular opinion, but I can't wait to hear what those were.
I will try to recall the conversation from the whitest table here. I think when we talked about motivation, we talked a lot about what we knew at the time and the lack of awareness that we had, with the implication of it being, it was intentional and structural. And I think that the motivation then became, once you became aware of this, it became unacceptable. And I think that's kind of where we ended up on this topic.
Yeah.
I love that. You want to keep that mic, Bob? We want to go to the next question, which is, oh, we have more.
Can I add something?
Yes,
Short?
absolutely.
So, yeah, I think initially, a lot of my thoughts and interest in entering the conversation were from a point of ignorance and being naive, but also from the white privilege of thinking, oh, this is a problem we can fix. And, you know, I mean, I was in school in the 60s and early 70s, and, you know, I saw the marches and things, and it just seemed like I could just jump on the bandwagon and we were going to solve this problem because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And then, you know, now I'm at a point where the more I know, the more I realize that I don't know.
Yeah.
And every time I uncover some assumption I have, I realize how many more I have not yet recognized.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Can I pick up? Okay. Okay, so the next question, which every table must answer, someone else at the table must answer. What is an unpopular opinion you hold about racism, and who is it unpopular with? So we'll go back to table 3 and ask someone to share. Brian and I shared, so
We did.
It's very,
And just
to, go ahead.
Yeah, and this is an important question because there is a real importance to being able to address and understand nuance and perspective. And so we don't just ask this question just because it's like, ooh, let's get people to, it's important to understand that human perspective does shape the way that we see these things. This is why this question's here.
Yes.
It's not just because we're like, here, say something that's going to be, we go, ooh.
Right, that's right. People online are open to answering number 1 if they'd like to. I'll leave it open while you go ahead and answer, Sue. We'll leave it open for them people online to answer number 1.
We spent less time on this, but my unpopular opinion is that there is racism and we need to do something about it. And I think that there are folks in my congregation where I've started that discussion that agree with that, and there are folks that probably do not.
Yeah.
However, they have opted so far not to be visible. I fully expect as we continue our anti-racism policy work that there will be more discussion, pro and con, about that.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Table 2. Someone other than the persons who've spoken before?
I feel like it's,
Karen's bullying people not to talk.
she's really hiding behind her.
The question is, what is an unpopular opinion you hold about racism, or who is it unpopular with? Anyone online can answer as well. Love it. I love it. It's hard.
It's question 2, right?
Talk right into the mic.
That's right, yeah.
Right into the mic, Jen. Pastor Code, right into the mic.
Unpopular. But I believe, sorry.
Eat it, yes.
So I believe all human being has a discriminations. So like we say, racism, but I believe that each person has the discriminations. So which is like, even though I grew up in Korea, so then even in the Korea, we are the same race, but we have discrimination between them. And also maybe here in the U.S., they like segregate, the race right now. But however, I believe when white people immigrant here, and I know that among them they have to discriminate each other. But I heard, I don't know exactly where that, Italian or, they call them as like black, right? So because they discriminate each other, and then later on, African Americans comes, and then, oh yes, so we discriminated these guys.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that I believe all human being has discrimination in their hearts. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Co. I appreciate that. We could have a whole class on that one.
Actually, if you go back to the very beginnings of the Awareness and Transformation series,
Yeah,
we
we
did an
talked about
extended
that.
conversation about defining terms.
Yeah.
And in that conversation, we talked about racism versus bias.
Yeah.
Because everyone has bias. Racism is bias plus power.
Yeah, yeah.
So people are like, well, black people are, like they can be
reverse
racist against white
racism.
people.
Yeah.
No, they cannot.
Right.
Categorically. They can have bias against white people. They cannot be racist against white people.
Yeah.
Because racism is bias plus power.
Yeah.
If I talk on behalf of somebody else, can I speak again?
Well,
So-
if you must, you're breaking the rules. But go ahead.
I know. Steve Worth, who had to leave, Steve said that his unpopular opinion was that he's firmly convinced at this stage of our history that racism in the North is much worse than in the Deep South.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
And
statement.
that his son and daughter-in-law who's a person of color have made the decision to move to Atlanta because it's a much more comfortable place for them to raise their child in than Pittsburgh.
Wow. That's it. That's an opinion. Oh my, I love it. Yeah. He said South. He didn't say Deep South. He said South.
Well, I don't know what Steve's opinion is, but I do know that when we were doing stories about this kind of thing and about how geographically segregated and economically segregated Pittsburgh was, Atlanta was always held up, and he mentioned it too, as a place where whatever flaws it has big black middle class neighborhoods.
Oh,
and lots
it
of
is
them,
diverse in
with
Atlanta.
a lot of where the people there can shape their lives much more easily than they can in Pittsburgh. So.
No, I appreciate that. Anyone online? No? Oh, okay, gotcha.
Just to add to that, because Steve and I were talking about that essentially the South never lost. There is no one, no loser that has streets named after them, that has statues named after them, that glorifies like Gone in the Wind, so it glorifies the South. They never lost.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, B. You were.
Oh. Question 3 was, what is a core concept? And I hope this question made sense, and I hope we kind of modeled it, like a key idea that for you has been helpful to latch on to.
So one of the things we talked about was motivation, right? Motivation is when we enter into this space. So when Brian and I have these conversations, he clearly knows my motivation, I know his motivation, right? So when you think about, and I hope this is how you entered it, when you think about it, there are some things that you enter into this space, you're like, this is it for me. This is central in this conversation. Now, we requested for you to be open to the curiosity of someone else's central, but we wanted you to name your central focus when discussing race in these spaces. So we'll go with table 3 first and work our way back.
We said that all people are children of God, and that's what, I think all of us just unanimously agreed with that.
So to be clear, in all instances where you talk about or have a discussion about race or racism or anything between, you see every person as a children of God.
And I'm not saying we're able to see that. I'm saying that we believe it to be true.
Okay.
But living it and acting on that is a totally different thing.
All right, thank you. I appreciate
That's kind of
that.
like, we all want to be Christians, but none of us are capable of being like Christ.
Yes.
So.
One of my heroines who has had a spectacular fall from grace, so I won't quote him, but one of his lines was, what happened, or what would happen if you treated every child you met as if they were made in the image of God? It's a rhetorical question, right? Of course they're made in the image of God. His phrasing was, what would happen if you treated them? And then I will say, my caution against that axiom is that it is true, and it is a slippery slope to, you must not see color, right? That is the danger, like, it is true, don't hear me wrong. But that is also where I've seen white folks be like, well, race doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't see race.
Yeah, I will see that too. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, guys. Table 2.
I'll speak now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The core concept for me is understanding and empathy for everyone's journey. To me, that's important.
Yeah. Understanding and empathy of everyone's journey is what Elder Perry said. Yeah.
What is the core concept for you that is central for discussion about race? I'm going to say is where you spend your money.
Oh. Where you spend your money. I like that. Where you spend your money. Yeah. Table 1.
For me, and we just started to talk about this briefly, the issue of classism and casteism is as prominent in my experience as racism, and they intertwine. So the core concept is, to me, is the intersectionality between these isms that reinforce each other and strengthen each other and complicate the whole picture. And there's a whole list of other isms that you can list, and the top in my mind is right now militarism and colonialism. And those are so solidly correlated with racism that you almost can't separate them. And I think in this country there's this phenomenon of you do have black middle class, you also have black people in the power structure who demonstrate a classism that might not be directly racism in that sense.
Yeah. Thank you. That's fantastic. Any other thoughts? Anyone online want to dive in? Everyone out of a food coma from online? Anyone else want to share? What is the core concept for you that is central to discussions about race? No one online?
On our third question, Sherilyn says, where children are raised and taken to is a core.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So, I'm sorry, who said that?
Sherilyn?
Thank you. Sherry Lynn, you said?
Sherilyn, sure.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. So, I can't remember specifically the quote by James Baldwin, but he would, one of his mantras was, where are we taking our children, basically? You know, how are we leaving? How are we educating them? Where are we, what planet are we leaving for them? What opportunities are we leaving for our children? So that really resonates with me as well. So thank you for that. So one of the things that Brian and I did not get into, which we're going to get into now for a good 10 minutes here, is what is the connection between congregational vitality and the conversation about racism? So how this came about was we said we were doing a lot of talking here, and we really haven't talked about Jesus yet. We were really deep and heavy in the conversation about what's important in these spaces of conversation, beloved community, you know, that kind of invites us to think about JFK, Martin Luther King, and all those things. So when we talked about congregational vitality, we talked about reconciliation and what that means for us as Christians. So I'm going to pause here, and we're going to ask the question about reconciliation, but I want to give you time to think about it. So when we think about reconciliation, when it comes to not only congregational vitality, but in terms of racism through the lens of congregational vitality, okay? So let's be specific here. When we think of reconciliation, this and this, okay? In terms of congregational vitality through the lens of racism and congregational vitality, what does that mean for us? Okay? I'm going to pause for a couple seconds, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then Brian and I will give you some of the things we talked about and some of the things we landed on when it comes to creating a space where this is influenced. I know some of... Okay, so... No, thank you. So some people in the space were like, we don't really understand what you're asking. So let me dwill it down a little bit. What is reconciliation? I'll ask that question first. What is reconciliation to you as a Christian? What does that mean to you? Let's start there. What is reconciliation? Those of you online, please.
Yeah, and for those of you online, Mark just picked up the microphone and put it in front of Carol. So that's the laughter that you heard in the room.
What is reconciliation? We absolutely have a point here, but we got to find our way there. What is reconciliation? Mending a relationship. Yeah?
Reconnecting. Carol and I always talk about the
reconnecting. So mending a relationship, yes. Reconnecting, what else?
I think of it, when you say the word reconciliation, I think of it in accounting. Not that I know nothing about accounting, but I think of reconciling the books and making everything come out right, so that it's balanced.
So reconciling the books,
harmony.
so everything comes out right. There's a harmony. I love that. We have somebody online too.
We have assuring that what is discussed and shared among my environment is always understood.
Assuring that what is discussed and shared is always understood.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
So I think about those baptismal, ordination, those moments when we stand to make an affirmation of faith. And what do we say in that question? Do you renounce the power of sin and evil in the world, and do you turn to Jesus Christ? And so for me, reconciliation is the recognition that there is every molecule, every particle of my being is to turn over to Jesus and to reflect that light, and that there are still particles that need to be turned over. And so that it is a daily thing, and in a communal sense, it's a powerful thing for people. There's also a way to say you're not irredeemable, which is my unpopular belief, and is to say, because we all are in need of redemption, and so that constant turning over is also incredibly vital.
It is absolutely vital.
And it leads to the transformation of yourself and of the community.
Yes. So that reconciliation leads to the transformation of not only yourself, but your community. Okay? So in those terms, to go back to the question of kind of not understanding the question that Brian and I asked, if we were to think about reconciliation in terms of as an equivalent of what it means to be a vital congregation, okay? So what it means to be a vital congregation is the opportunity for us to be encouraging in the turning over and over and through all the things, through worship, through prayer, through singing, through preaching, through all the things, right? This recognition of turning over, okay? So if we had the lens of vitality through that for congregations, okay? So whether it's a full stop, everyone still with me? Shake some heads. Okay. From that space, when we decide to enter into a conversation about race and racism, okay, what connections can we draw to that reconciliation for vitality in the conversation about racism? That's what I'm asking. You want to say it a little better?
I think it may help for us to answer.
Okay.
To be honest.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, I have to go first?
Yeah, you have to go first.
Okay.
I've been talking a lot, so you have to go first.
So the other way to phrase this is, why does this matter to the church?
Yeah.
Why are exercises like this not just virtue signaling? Right? For me, and this will surprise no one in the room who knows me, I was actually saying to Ralph, I did not realize how much intercultural premarital counseling I've had to do. I kind of went back through my mind. About half the weddings I've done for my former youth group kids, so my youth group kids are all 35 and under at this point, they have married somebody who was of a different race. And so what's going to happen, and is already happening, is they then get together and they have children that we use the phrase mixed race, right? And so if the church does not get around cultural understandings of their own culture and their dominant culture, they're never going to be able to engage families who have mixed race kids, right? It's just not going to happen. And those kids, because what we know is that kids belong where they believe, or they believe where they belong. So if the church cannot figure out how to create spaces of belonging in which cultural differences are recognized, appreciated, and honestly and openly discussed, we will not reach the next generation. And what is the faith of the next generation worth? Everything. Everything, right? And so if you're at the Ryan Burge event last week, Ryan Burge tore into Presbyterians because we have a retention problem, right? We do not retain our own. That's causes enough trouble. But if we do not get our heads around this cultural question, when we're already looking at the fact that as of 2020, under 18, the majority of kids are not white in this country, not as true in Pittsburgh, but still, that's a very important part for congregational vitality when we look at the emerging generation, in which some racial lines that that have been blurred are going to get really, really blurred in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And those kids are not going to find places to belong, then we are not going to be able to engage them with the gospel. Because that is the gospel, right? Creating a space of belonging is the work of the gospel for emerging generations. It's not a ploy that you create a belonging space so they believe. The belonging space is the gospel.
Yep. Yeah.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, man. Difference between Savior and Sojourner,
Yes,
right? There's an opportunity there. I said the difference between Savior and Sojourner is what I said in that. So does that help you and Karen? Does that help you guys in trying to answer the question? Keep going. They want us to continue to talk. So, well, which I appreciate. So why does it matter? So as Brian said, why does it matter? And for all the reasons that Brian stated are absolutely true. Also, I would add, when we started these conversations way back in 2020, we had in mind an opportunity to add a resource for adult education for our churches. That was our intent. And it turned out to be fun. It turned out to be really beneficial for our churches. We thought it would be. We didn't know how much it would be at the time. But what I didn't count on is hearing from those individuals like a Sue and a Carol and a Bob and all those who come back to me and said, I really hadn't thought about that, right? So to offer an opportunity for them to affirm their recognition of that turning to Christ over and over and over again, right? And you get this input of information of, as I'm open to, Carol mentioned this, I'm being open to turning again and learning and growing and being the light. I have been inputted with this new information that allows me to continue to be open to and be transformed by and move forward. I think if we were trying to create spaces where we have a conversation, if we can articulate the fact that this is why we're here, because we recognize that reconciliation or transformation is important for us as Christians, that allows for us to be the Christians that Christ has called us to be, it'll be easy for people to take the off-ramp and be like, I don't even think that I need to have this conversation. But if it becomes a factor for you, and if it becomes a factor for you and for you, that recognizing that reconciliation and turning again, providing some more information about my relationship with my brothers and sisters of color, again, it just opens a space where people are more comfortable to share and recognize because they believe that they want to live into a gospel life. Earlier I said this, and I'll keep saying this, I know that's not easy, but if we're not able to articulate that in a way that those of us who call ourselves Christians can understand, then what are we doing? Then really, really, what are we doing? Because the person who comes that you really want to take that next step is someone you're probably not going to agree with on a lot of different things, right? A lot of different things, a lot of things, right? That someone they may not say go as far as there's no such thing as racism, but they may say that I'm not racist. But you've heard them say racist things in the past in your church. Someone just mentioned this earlier, right? So if you're not able to articulate why this is important to you in this space where you want them to come and feel safe and have a conversation, I think that's to the detriment of the space and the conversation. That's what I wanted to lead for our connection here. So we're running a little bit short on time here. We didn't want to leave without talking about a little bit about Christian nationalism. Bill talked about the interconnectivity between racism, nationalism, colonialism, all those things, and he's absolutely right, okay? But Brian and I also get these conversations from our pastors and questions about our pastors and congregants about Christian nationalism and why is it so bad? Why isn't it so bad that we want this country to just have a lens of Christianity and be Christians? So we thought, well, we know that you probably have been bombarded by them as well. So before we get into like the meat of what we feel about it and what we feel about it, I'm just wondering, just to stay out there, is this something that comes up within your congregations in your churches? So I hear a yes. Not really here.
Part of our curiosity, so part of this is honest curiosity.
It really is.
Because we know where this is super prevalent.
Yes.
But we can't get a gauge on how prevalent it is within our own congregational settings.
Yes. So we'll get the one-off, which we love and we appreciate. So keep calling the one-off, two-off conversations from pastors and congregants who will call and ask questions. But we really don't know if it is a prevalent conversation and topic within our churches. Are you pastors? People asking these questions of you, or
The boss
do
raised
the
her hand.
the boss raised her hand?
Yeah, you missed it.
Everyone, stop! Stop! The boss raised her hand.
She hates
Stop
it when we
everything.
do that, by the way.
She hates it.
She hates it so much.
So I wanted to say, like, I think the reason why the conversation is not happening is one, that we're neglecting to see it as prevalent as it is, and we are unsure how to engage it. And then the other part is what I always I don't know who said this, but it's like, I get 1 hour lucky a week with my people to help shape them in the gospel, and cable news gets 23 hours times 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So, and then part of it is that people would say, I'm not sure that's a problem. So I think it's so multivariate, and it's probably different in different places.
Yeah, I would
It's
agree.
hard to nail down.
Yes. So she just named the point. You know, one of the things Brian and I said was, I said this and Brian agreed. I think the reason why we may not have it as a problem is because we don't know how to talk about it. Like, that was the main thing that we said. Like, we don't know how to talk about it. So it's just out here because we don't know how to address it, ignore it. Someone says, yes, it's a Christian nation. This country was built as a Christian nation, all these things. We just leave it out there. Okay?
Soldiers who die for the cause of a nation.
Yes, soldiers who die for a cause of it, all those things. Okay. So let's take a little bit of a step back. All right. Can we agree on the danger of Christian nationalism? Okay. Why is it dangerous? Everyone in here said yes. Why is it dangerous? Even the ones online. Why is it
we got a
dangerous?
volunteer.
We got a volunteer.
The Bishop William Barber refuses to use the term Christian nationalism. He uses the word religious nationalism because he believes fundamentally Christianity and nationalism are antithetical.
Antithetical,
to each
yeah.
other.
Antithetical, yes.
And,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's, I guess I can't say it any better than that.
That's wonderfully said.
Yep.
Anyone else? Why? We all said yes. I heard everyone. It was really loud. Yes. Why? Why is it harmful? Yes, Sue. Someone online can answer too. We should have prepped them. We should have had this before
We are
dinner.
not just a nation of Christians. We are a nation of many religious people and many people who are not religious. And by stating Christian nationalism, we are eliminating all of those other people who will then not have any voice in what is decided in this country.
Carol.
I also think that God gave us free will, and if we make a decision on what religion has to be for our nation or the world, then we are bypassing the gift that God gave us.
Thank you. More comments. I knew we had them in. I knew we had it in us. I knew it.
So I think in some ways Christian nationalism, even though it's taken on a strong identity of its own, is a latest chapter in a long story that I've been, dealing with for many years, and what makes it really difficult is you have to always go back to what Jesus are we worshiping. So I think Christian nationalism is dangerous because I think it turns the gospel message on its head. Christian nationalism is about triumphalism. It's about putting yourself over other people. But we have the Old Testament and the New Testament telling us to welcome the stranger, to take care of those in need, that the last shall be first, that the least are the most important. All of that is antithetical to the Christian nationalism message. So I actually think it's a form of heresy, that it's not real. It's not good nationalism, and it's certainly not Christianity.
So recognizing the time, is there anything you want to add to that before we?
I want to see where you go next.
I wanted to receive questions. We haven't had that.
I just want to say one thing. I think what's really important for us to realize, first of all, is that one of the key reasons why the whole idea of separation of church and state came into effect was the Baptists and the Presbyterians wanted to make sure them darn Episcopalians didn't tell us how to do church. So at one point in time, we were other, and we were very glad to not have a state church. Remember that?
Yes.
Second of all, there were an awful lot of people in the South who didn't look like me, who were awfully good Christians. When we talk about Christian nationalism, we are not talking about the black church. We are talking about a decidedly white Christian nationalism. I think it's important that when people say, well, Christian nationalism, no, white Christian nationalism. Let's make it very clear that it is inextricably tied to race. It is not about faith. It is about race and power, and the bridge is the word Christian.
Yeah.
If you want to see all my conflict averseness go away.
He gets very passionate about it. So,
the first
again,
sermon I preached on the 4th of July, I made him read the Barman Declaration. I did.
So
Okay.
I'll remind you of the resource that Brian and I put together, and some of the things that we've talked about in the past and most recently. So please use that as an opportunity to invite you to look into and see where your people are at, because it's there. I think it just needs someone who has the courage to bring it forward and have an honest conversation in the midst of community of faith. But with that, recognizing time, we always end these sessions with the opportunity for questions. The last time Brad and I did this, we had fun, and we asked the question of the audience to give an understanding of how proximity and relationship is key to understanding your brothers and sisters of color. We actually asked the audience, and I'm going to invite you either way, so you can ask Brian a question, and he would have to ask the question as if I would answer, and me vice versa. You can do that or not, it's up to you. But the question is we are open-ended for questions. So what kind of questions would you have for us when it's relative to your context as a church leader, or anywhere in between? What kind of questions do you have for us? There's two. Just give it to Karen first. Karen first, and then just give, because you raised your hand first, that's all.
My context is this is the first majority white congregation I've served as their pastor in 30 years. So I moved to Pittsburgh, which is a majority white city, but also in a majority white church. I'm interested in why you think every conversation I go to about race in Pittsburgh comes down to black-white. Even though there are an equal number of people of color in the other categories. So I realize that blacks are the majority of all the people of color, 12%, as opposed to the rest are 12%, or 12 and a half. But anyway, I'm curious why you think it always comes down to black-white. Like 2 seconds in, it's black-white, especially given the changing nature of the city. So anybody got a comment?
I'm happy to. It's easy. It's palatable. It broadens the intensity of the oppression when we expand it in our conversation to our Native brothers and sisters, to our Asian brothers and sisters. That is real. To our Korean brothers and sisters. When we expand it, it heightens, it intensifies the feeling of all the feelings. Let me say all the feelings. So when we get into this space, even between individuals who are leading the class on it, it is easier and more palatable to dull is not the right word, to bring it down to a black-white. Because when we expand it, it just shows the enormity of the oppression and the expanse of the caste that we actually do have in this country. Doesn't make it right. It's terrible. I was actually just talked about this in an adult education class a couple weeks ago. But it is real, and I have noticed it. So thank you. Did I answer your question, Ms. Karen? Yeah. Did you want to?
I would only add, I think one of the unique aspects of Pittsburgh is the neighborhood nature of it, and the incredibly how small the transient population of Pittsburgh is. And I think because of our neighborhood structure, our geography, it is kind of incredibly isolating. And I think that also drives the conversation, is that, like, I have to tell people, like, I'm not from around here. I've lived in West Pennsylvania for over half my life. I'm not a Pittsburgher. I will never be a Pittsburgher because I don't have the right qualifications. So amplify all that over race, right, and history. And yeah, I mean, it is amazing how outside I still feel despite having lived here for so long.
Thank
If you didn't tell us, we wouldn't have known, Brian.
What?
If you didn't tell us you were from New Jersey, we wouldn't have known.
Other questions?
Yes. These are all good questions, but sometimes I think that we are preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
I think most of us don't have that problem, but I think some of us also feel that vitality, as far as a church, is determined by your membership. And if you don't have the members, or if you think you're going to take on something that some of your members may not like, you're going to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
We have some pastors out there that would love to talk about it, but are afraid.
Yeah.
That is something that we have to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah, so yes, you're right. We ad nauseum talk about, this fear of extinction, of not being recognized, not being the church anymore. So you got on top of that. Hey, we want you to talk about race in your predominantly white space. Who may turn off some people who've been going here for 30 years and who are the financial support, or all the things that add into it. We get that. Brian and I have actually have talked about that as well. All I can say to that is, at some point, and it's easy for me to sit here, I'm not a pastor of a church right now, so it's easy for me to sit there. At some point, we really do have to make a decision. We have to make a decision on what vitality really means for us as a church. We have to make a decision on, how we lead individuals to Christ for transformation. If we're afraid to have these conversations, whether it's race, whatever ism it is, like Bill talked about, which is which must be because of what Jesus taught us, then it's saying a lot about the church and its state. No wonder we're in decline, right? Again, it's easy for me to say. I'm not a pastor of a church. There is this, we hear regularly for churches who are declining, and if they're going to close and not close, how do we become more relevant? How do we, get more members? All the things, right? And we always say, that's the wrong question. The question you should be asking is, are we living into what Christ is calling us to do and be as a community of faith? And if the answer to that question at somewhere along the line is to live a gospel life where we recognize that there is racism, where we recognize that there is a patriarchy, there's sex, all the things, sexism, all the things, then I'm really not sure that we're living into the vitality that we think we're living into. Again, it's easy for me to say that. I'm not a pastor of a church. I will end with this, and I'd love to hear your answer. I know successful pastors in this presbytery who struggle with and compete with the vitality of numbers, and also step into conversations about race and all these things, and are quote-unquote successful. I have plenty of examples of that. So if I didn't have any examples of that, then maybe it's a different conversation. But I have examples of that. There's an opportunity there. So I would encourage us to rethink our definition of vitality when we decide not to step into these conversations because we're afraid of losing individuals.
So where are those churches?
I mean, there's
And the reason why I'm asking is because I will bet you there are suburban churches that are out there that do not have black people attending.
Right.
That will not bring this up because we don't have any black people here.
I agree.
And if I bring it up, I'm not going to have a job. I know it is the Christian thing to do, to bring this up, but I'm afraid because, you know, my people came out here because they wanted to get away from the black people in the inner city.
That is true. So all I can say to that is, as a man of color, is there is an opportunity and a lens for education of your people. And if you are able, so what I hear in that, Elder Lenore, is, you know, we go from this static, we're not talking about it till we're talking about it. And that there is a long gap in between there. And if you know and love your people, and we are interested in reconciliation, it's not reconciling for me to be here and not talk about it and then go right here, because we leave a whole bunch of people behind. So if you know your people and you love your people, you need to be able to have a conversation that leads them step by step to be able to have the conversations vital for beloved community. Okay? So you're right. I would advise not to go from here right to here, because that is not an opportunity for transformation through Christ. It is not. But what it really is, opportunity is for us as leaders, not only just pastors, but leaders in our churches, to guide our congregations, our communities step by step, so that it is a faithful next step to have these conversations about race. Okay, so maybe you're not talking about race first. You're talking about the different Lutheran community that lives on the street and their different beliefs, right? I'm serious. And Brian talked about this earlier, different cultural beliefs. So I think that's a faithful step. Again, though, there is an opportunity to live into the gospel life. What we can't do is stay here. That's what we can't do. So you're right, but there are churches that do it. There are pastors that did it, okay? There are congregations that are all white that did it, that continue to do it. So there's an opportunity there. I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I would only add that this is where being a part of a progressive mainline denomination is not our friend. It's the white woke superiority complex. Well, why isn't your church like reading How to Be Anti-Racist? Because your people aren't ready for it, right? I mean, the reality is we can move people one step from where they are. That's all we can do. And so I think that we need to, so the pressure is, as Ralph said, to move your people from here to here. And a lot of our predominantly white congregations aren't ready to get there. They're never going to get to step 7 if they don't get to step 2. And so that's where I think some of the pressure. I am very interested, and this conversation I need to have with a good friend of mine, because when I look at the racial composition of our departed brethren in ECO is a much more racially diverse denomination than we are. And I'm really fascinated to unpack that with them, because that goes against what we think should be true. Mm-hmm. And when because I follow them and I see they are constantly ordaining people who are non-white. It's really interesting. And so there's a lens there that I need to figure out, because I don't have an answer. It's interesting to me that in congregations that are historically more conservative. Yeah. Can you tell us what ECO is? Oh, sorry. So the Evangelical Covenant Order of Presbyterians was a splinter denomination that broke off after the sexuality questions were argued and settled in the PCUSA. The big difference being they are fully egalitarian in ordaining women. Which the other Presbyterian denominations are not.
Yep. We had a question from online.
We do. Linda asks, our church is going to be in the process of developing our anti-racism policy. Have you seen policies developed by other churches which we can use as a template?
I'm going to speak to this.
Okay.
I think the value, if there is value in the General Assembly making us write another policy, it is the process of writing it can start the conversation in your congregation. That is the value. The value is not the policy itself. Right. The value is in the process of preparing it, initiating the conversation. That's the value.
And yes, we will have examples of that. ARTT and many other committees will have opportunities to have examples for those churches who are interested in that. We have a few more minutes. Any other questions?
2 minutes, and we each have to get in our final point.
We do, because I got a good final point. Yeah. Question?
Not a question, but a comment.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian, you went to Brian, or what's his name? Brian, whatever.
To Ryan Burge.
Ryan Burge, we need to explain who Ryan Burge is real quick.
No, wait. He made clear why. White progressive people are not in the same place as people of color.
Sure. Yeah.
That is why
Mhm.
the church broke up. That is why. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Conservative
Yeah.
churches of color, and the PCUSA made a decision to be 20% people of color by 2000 and something, and they became it. It was successful. And then we had this big fight.
Yeah, we did. We absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, yes, we did. This theological fight.
Said, we want people of color, but only liberal people of color.
Mhm.
Believe what we believe, the way we believe.
Mhm. So the conversation in the room is about the affirmation of what Brian said, basically, and also how we as a denomination moved to this space after affirming that we needed to be more diverse, then getting into a theological battle about queer, about all the things, and here we are. So, which is a reality. And I can feel the tenseness growing in this
Yeah.
space, so we should wrap up. So
We should wrap up.
So you have a final point in that.
Here's my final point. It's a quote I found yesterday. The future of the PCUSA likely hinges on whether it can successfully transition from being a white church with some diversity to an intercultural church that reflects the multi-ethnic reality of 2045.
I am once again going to say something very unpopular, but my final point is this. I fully believe there is an opportunity for those who are gathered, those who are online, and anyone who's going to hear this in the future, for you to have and create your own resources using these, and we gave you and others, to create spaces where you can have these conversations. I think the people in this room, I think the people online, I think you guys are all capable of doing that, and I love you for it. And there are times in this world where injustice calls for a screaming, I almost said violent, picket, marching, loud voice that says, that is injustice and you must hear me. Both are true. The question is, are we going to allow that to happen? Because right now we're being forced into picking sides and being really loud about it, the injustice. When I think sometimes the more purposeful approach as Christians is to just simply create a space for these conversations of difficult, hard, differing opinions about race, Christian nationalism, or whatever ism you can think of, okay? But my final point is, there are those of us who are called to do that, and those of us who are called to scream and yell about the injustice in the world. I don't know which one you guys are, but I want to make sure you understand that you need to decide that and live it to its fullest, okay? With that, we want to close. We're going to ask our fearless leader to come back up and close us out in prayer. Just get another excuse for her to come up.
Well, can we all show our appreciation for Ralph
Thank
and
you.
Brian
Thank
and
you.
their work?
Appreciate it.
That was awesome. And those of you who joined online, thank you for staying with us. And I'm curious what you had for dinner. We had really good Colombian food here, so that was fun. And thank you for all attending, taking time out of the sunshine. I heard there was sunshine out today, and
There
it was
was.
warm. That's what the word. I haven't left the building, so. But I'm glad that you could come and share in conversation and community. But let us close in prayer. Loving Lord Jesus, someday, some time ago, your story captured us. The love that you have for us made us fall in love with you. The story that you have written for our lives reminded us that we are yours and we are your beloved, with whom you are well pleased. And yet we know that there is this big chasm. All the moments in which we have not lived as your beloved, not have followed in the way of Jesus, not have followed in the love that you have for us. We pray that we might reflect more abundantly your light, your grace, that we might reflect more abundantly the beauty of your creation and all of your people. So help us to enter into messy and hard and courageous conversations. And when we do, that we might be more fully reconciled to you and to the goodness of your liberation. Go with us as we find our rest, and awaken us up to the new mercies that you call us to, and give us the bravery and the resilience to be faithful for yet one more day. In the name of the one who is blazing a path ahead of us, who is our hope, in whom we trust. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
We should have the recording of this conversation available, if not before Easter, by the end of Easter. So